Hello everybody and welcome to Toitū Curator's Corner, episode number 10. My name is Sean Brosnan. I'm a curator at Toitū Settlers Museum here in Dunedin. And I'll be making these short videos about early Dunedin history to provide some infotainment to our museum visitors during the great coronavirus lockdown of 2020 when they can't actually come into the museum. Today's story is going to be about the Toitū stream. It takes us back to the very beginning of the Dunedin settlement. So when the settlers first arrived at the future site of Dunedin, they found that almost all the flatland along Princes Street and George Street was crisscrossed by little streams and rivulets that flowed down from the bush-clad hills above. As James Adam described the primordial site in his memoir, Princes Street was represented by two surveyors' lines 2 miles long and 66 feet apart. The street consisted of flax, grass, stumps of trees, creeks and bogs. It was basically just really one giant bog, and the first thing that the pioneers had to do to make any of that land habitable was to dig drains in it to begin drying it out so they could begin developing their sections and start building. Reverend Thomas Burns' diary through 1848 is full of references to such drain digging operations, teams of men working together to try and create some dry spaces on what he called the Great Dunedin Meadow. But some of the waterways were more substantial than could be dealt with by simply digging a drain, and the most important of them all was undoubtedly the Toitū. It was fed by numerous watercourses that gathered up on the hill around Mornington and across to Balnowes, and which drained down the gully, which is now the line of Hawthorne Avenue, Serpentine, and down to McLagan Street. At the bottom of the hill, it then veered a little bit to the right, about where the warehouse is now, at the corner of Broadway, and then it went over the street, down underneath the Southern Cross Hotel, where that is now, and it came out on the corner of High and Princes Street. Then again it veered a little bit further to the right before discharging into the sea on the shingly beach, which is now the Water Street side of John Whitcliffe House. That's the spot where it finally went into the sea. Now when there was heavy rain, it must have become quite a torrent, and it's remembered that it was powerful enough to sweep a man away if he wasn't careful. One such flood actually forced John de la Condamine Carnegie out of that first house and store that he built that we followed in the last episode, the one that James Adam built for him. He wrote home to Scotland in a letter in June 1849 describing having to abandon the house at the back of his High Street section and rent something else somewhere else in town. Now the Toitū's water was originally clean and clear, limpid it was described by some, and it was one of the reasons why Charles Kettle chose to base his surveying operation just along to the south of it. The Toitū stream was his source of fresh water, while a bush up behind it provided firewood and building materials. Once the settlers arrived, however, the Toitū just became a nuisance. It was slap bang in the middle of town and provided a watery obstacle if you tried to travel along Princes Street. It was crossed to begin with by a simple plank, and it was a common practical joke among the more irresponsible of the first settlers to remove that plank at inopportune moments to create a nuisance for their fellow pioneers. Then a basic wooden bridge was laid down. It was one of the first public works projects in Dunedin, in fact, but this was pretty unsatisfactory, particularly for dray traffic. Imagine heavy bullocks trying to get across a pretty basic wooden bridge, and there were complaints all through the 1850s about it. First with calls to replace it with something more substantial, to repair it, to fix it up, and then finally to put a stone bridge there in its place. But nothing seemed to happen. It was just patched up until about 1857. And then finally, the stream was diverted through channels and culverts. The watercourse itself was filled up, and the Toitū finally disappeared underground, never to be seen by people travelling along Princes Street ever again. It is still there, of course. And if you happen to walk up McLagan Street to Serpentine and onto Hawthorne Avenue during the quiet of a coronavirus lockdown, as I happened to do yesterday, you can hear it under the street through the manhole covers, rushing on its way down the hill towards the sea. And if you go a little bit higher up, you can even see some of the structures that now guide its waters safely into this artificial course and on beneath our feet to the ocean. At the bottom of Princes Street, its underground route takes it along Lower High Street, then past the front of our museum complex, on towards the railway station, and then turning right along Chewsley Street to discharge into the sea at Friat Street beneath the wharf. Which is one reason why Toitū is such a great name for a museum about Dunedin history. Not only does our museum complex sit on the banks of the stream, albeit it's now underground and you can't see it, but it also takes us back in time to the very beginning of the Dunedin settlement. Because as the pioneers pulled up on that little shingly beach by Water Street in their little boats and squelched ashore, it was into the mud of the Toitū that they strode confidently into their future. So I hope you enjoyed that little story about the Toitū, our museum's namesake, and a long forgotten waterway in central Dunedin, which is well worth remembering. If you did enjoy the story, you might like to subscribe to this channel and be notified of future episodes of Curator's Corner as they come out. As our lockdown situation continues, albeit a bit modified, we'll still be making these stories and making them available through this channel. So we look forward to sharing those with you in the future.